Welcome to an hour of Guitars, Life, and Mortality. I give you Greg Voros, who can tell his own story. I'm John Thomas. John, our organizer, our host, put us together, and I think in short order, you will figure out why. So, Greg, tell us what your current job is, then we'll jump back to how you got there, and then we'll take a look to the future for both of us.
I love it. So I'm the oversight manager for George Gruhn at Gruhn Guitars in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with George for a little over 18 years. I've done a lot of his restoration work. I've managed a repair shop. I've done a bunch of things for George on the senior management level. And that's been amazing. It opened many, many doors for me. It was just fantastic. That is what I did for a very long time. Made some videos, instructional videos, so on and so forth, and everything was going great up until about 2.5 years ago. 2.5 years ago, my father passed away right around COVID time, and I discovered 2 weeks later that I had diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis. I went through my flare, which lasted about 4 months, a good solid 4 months of being in bed. I wound up losing my right side, and almost immediately it retired me from restoration. My passion, I've written articles, this is it, right? So that's what my future was going to be. I always looked to the great Stradivarius, being a builder into the 70s. I've always thought that I could take my restoration abilities into at least into my 50s and 60s. Being 41 years old, it didn't go that way. So right after I came out of my flare, I wound up losing the majority of my right hand, which is still not functional, and I didn't get it back. So that was that. It was kind of burying my father, being diagnosed, and then burying my career. Well, with regards to the part that I really gave myself to, it's like a person doesn't give themselves to management. A person doesn't give themselves to being an oversight or repair shop manager. You have your craft. You know, this is what we do here. This is why everyone's here. It's to appreciate what we're able to do with our hands and our skills.
So we're going to start with the pity party, and then we'll go back. So you said 3.5 years ago, right? 2.5 years. So me, it's 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. I had surgery July 2020, and my prostate and a dozen lymph nodes removed. A year later, my PSA, prostate-specific antigen, that's just a protein that the prostate builds. If you don't have a prostate, you shouldn't have any prostate-specific antigen floating around in your blood. It rose up, and I underwent 8 weeks of daily radiation. That was ended around December 2021, and as of January this year, I discovered that my prostate cancer is still with me. That is, the surgery didn't remove it all. The radiation didn't sufficiently cook what was left, so now it has metastasized, which means it is left where it originally began. No matter where the cells land, once a prostate cancer cell, always a prostate cancer cell. So if it lands in your bone or your brain or your kidneys or wherever it might go, it's still prostate cancer. So I've got that. It is incurable. It is probably treatable. It is treatable to some extent. In this country, the default treatment right now is known as ADT, androgen deprivation therapy, otherwise known in the medical literature as chemical castration. So I get a drug called Lupron, which destroys my body's ability to produce testosterone. Cancer cells, prostate cancer cells, love testosterone. They can live without it, they just can't grow, but they can mutate. So it usually works for 2 or 3 years, and then life gets interesting. So John, our host, thought, put us together. We're going to talk about guitars, life, and then we're going to go back to mortality where we're going after this.
That's right.
But this man's story is amazing. So when he said, I did some instructional videos, he did the instructional video, right? So I would like us to get where you are at the top of the heap, right? This is a man who knows more about guitars than probably anybody here, and everybody here knows a lot about guitars. This is a man who's had his hands inside the great D45, $500,000 guitars, right? And gone on tour, teching, been with the Stones, with other people, all kinds. He's done everything, and he and I are going to lose a lot. He's already started losing a lot. So I would like everyone to know just how you got here. So you started in New York, working, and then get a knock on your door from George Gruhn, and runs the shop.
So yeah, so it was actually kind of crazy. I got started really young, and I was really fortunate that I did. Some people take time to find what they want to do in life. For me, it was at 18 years old. I wasn't very good at school. Then I knew I didn't want to go to college. And I was a guitar player. I played in some pretty noteworthy bands. It's not really the point, but the point was I knew that my skill set with regards to playing the guitar wasn't there. I knew it. I was able to tell myself. So my proper backup to that is actual guitar repairs from a young age and paying your dues. I didn't assume that because I knew how to play a little bit, I knew how to repair either. But a year into me apprenticing, I got hired on as a paid apprentice, and by the time I was 20, I had a lot of customers myself, and I actually made a pretty good living at 20 years old in New York repairing guitars. I did pretty all right.
And what shop were you working with?
Well, this was back when Guitar Center would farm out their repair work before they actually decided it was a good idea to hire repairmen. They actually farmed them out to legitimate outfits to do servicing of their instruments. So I got with one of those guys, and I was there for a couple of years. And I learned. I got going. I mean, I had happy customers, but I knew I was lacking in my abilities. Well, it was great. I could repair guitars all day long, and my other real passion was boxing. I love boxing, and I loved it for a very long time. And I trained very hard, and I had a great trainer, coaching team, and I had everything going. I boxed out of the Gruhn guitars. It's Gleason's gym in Brooklyn is the Gruhn guitars of vintage guitars. So I would bang around with the guys at Gleason's. I would fight. I had a great trainer, Hector Roca, world famous Panamanian trainer. He trained Arturo Gatti. He had a lot of guys. I would actually work over his champions, his top 10 ranked guys, to get them ready for Madison Square Garden when they fought at on ESPN. And something amazing happened to me during that time. It was great. So going back to it, it was wonderful for me because there's an old Oscar De La Hoya trick to boxing, and that is you train when you fight. Meaning you don't train in the morning because all the fights are at night, and it throws your headspace when you're banging at 8 in the morning because every fight takes place at 9 o'clock at night. And a lot of athletes or people don't realize what it does to you. That time difference of when you're used to training or whatnot. So it was great for me. I was able to repair guitars all day long, and then when I punched out at 6 o'clock, I would go home and have dinner with my girlfriend, my wife, and 20 some odd years ago. And then right after that, I would take my car to Gleason's, and I'd start at 9 o'clock, and I would end around 10:30 after the gym closes. We had a good camp, and I did that for a long time, and I had a good bit of amateur fights. And I did pretty well, and I really wanted to be a boxer. I made a great living repairing guitars, but I always wanted to be a boxer. So what changed all of that, it happened very quick. And it happened very quick. My sparring partner, I was Dimitri Salida's sparring partner, who was ranked top 10 welterweight. He fought Amir Khan. These are big people. And I worked him over, or tried to work him over around 6, 7, 8, 9. So he had different fresh sparring partners for weeks on and weeks. And then finally, he fought at the Garden. I forgot who he fought. This is just before he fought Amir Khan, which was on pay-per-view. That was a big fight. And all my friends came over, and we watched him on ESPN. It was great. 2 weeks later, after we recovered from any fight, we met at the gym. And right around that time, I purchased a newer Jeep Wrangler. And I was super proud. I was 20 years old, great car. I got my place. And then right next to me, he parked in with his later model Jeep Liberty. And he told me, I love the music, he was super cool, man. And he was 26-0 at the time. And I said to him, 26-0, brother, we had a great time watching you. And he said, man, this was my biggest purse. And he goes, man, this is my biggest purse, 26-0, I'm ranked, I'm doing it, man. I said, what'd you do, man? He goes, I bought most of that Liberty. So what that told me was that if you're 25 to 30-0 in boxing, and I know your name, and I want to be you, you're still making about $17,500 to $25,000 to headline Madison Square Garden as a welterweight top 10 rank. So then I said to myself at 21, 22 years old, I was like, man, dude, I'm already killing it in my world. I haven't even got my first professional fight, let alone 26 of them. And I'm already old at 22 for any of this. And right then and there, it made it clear to me that it wasn't going to be a road to success. My biggest focus, and this is the truth of it, my biggest focus was to get out of poverty. That's it. And my parents gave me an opportunity when I left. They left Hungary, lived in refugee camps, moved to New York. I didn't take full advantage of it. I didn't do well in school, so on and so forth. But then guitar repairs really, from a young age, it really took, and I went at it as the only thing that I had.
And how did you get the Gruhn gig? Anybody here vintage guitar fans? George invented the vintage guitar phenomenon, really, right? And the pinnacle of that profession is working at George's shop and becoming George's shop leader. And that's as high as you get. How did you get that job?
Man, you know, when I got hired on by Walter Carter Vintage Guitars, you know, and Walter, I called him from New York and I told him, hey man, I told him, hey Walter, you know, obviously I knew who he was and I was a student from an early age, so I read most of George's.
This was when Walter was still at George Gruhn's shop.
Yeah. So he said, hey man, listen, we're always looking for great repair guys. When you move down here, come by, and we'll give you a shot. And I said, oh man, this is my in. This is my in Gruhn guitars. And me and my wife, we packed up the Jeep. And we were down here 2.5 weeks later. That's it, we had nothing. I think we had like $1,500, $2,500. This was 17, 18 years ago.
So how did Walter know you had guitar repair chops to even give you a chance?
He didn't.
Why did he give you a chance then?
He hired me on as the most entry-level setup guy. And he hired me on as the greenest guy that Gruhn has ever hired. Facts. And I was humbled. And I already had. See, that's the thing. That's one of the biggest things that I did right in my life is when I got on with Gruhn's. I didn't look at the 4 years that I was making my customers happy. I was the green guy. I didn't care. I don't know anything. And whatever you show me, I'm gonna soak it up. I already read everything that was written. Now I just need to see. I need to see. I need to do. And I mean, you know, 3 years later, I made my instructional video with George.
Tell everybody about the instructional video.
The instructional video, it's Legacy Learning Systems came to me and we did a guitar setup and maintenance video. And this is going back maybe 13, 14 years ago when physical copies sale copies actually mattered. And it set some sort of record. It sold just under 10,000 hard copies, you know, and at $50 a piece, that's a real deal. So with that, I also made a lot of mistakes on the business side of all of this, you know, because I didn't get any richer from any of it. But fortunately for me, what it did was it was able to get my name out. And even now, I'm like the only person, or maybe not around here, but I never had a social media account. As many YouTube videos that I've done for people, Gibson, I've done Fender, whatever, I've done everyone's videos. I remember, you know, whatever it might be, I was never compensated for any of the videos, ever, not once, but I didn't care. Because I was there to say, this is what I'm offering, this is what I got. I knew it was about the name. I learned that 20 plus years ago from John Malione. I'm a student of all of these guys I just supplied in the restoration world and not in the build world.
And John, who started working repairs and restoration at Mantle Brothers, which are on Staten Island.
But I always, and it was so nice to meet John Malione this time around. As long as I've been around all these folks, I've never met him, and I always looked to him. He was a builder. I didn't want to be him in that way. I knew I was restoration, but I always loved the respect that he received. And at the end of the day, he's a bad dude. And he taught me that however you come across, you have to be polite, nice, or whatever it might be. But at the same time, you have to have the goods. If you don't have the goods, that's really it. It's the same thing with boxing. You want to be a world champion, you just got to win 36 in a row, and then you're better than every single male at that weight in the world. 154-pound champion is at 154. You're the greatest stand-up fighter in the world. It's not the United States. It's the world. So I wanted something substantial in that way. You know? So I made videos, so on and so forth. There's a natural progression, and I had a good mind for management and repair guys. I work really well with repair guys because I'm one of them, so it's easy. And so then I ran the repair shop until last year. I ran the repair shop for 12 years.
So you did become the best in the world, right? Running Gruhn's repair shop in the vintage guitar restoration repair field is the job, right?
It's the job. Yeah.
It's the job.
It's the
So how many years from when you walked in to get a trial doing setups
Before I
to
took
running the shop?
5 years.
5 years. It's crazy.
I know.
It's insane, right?
And I took the shop, man, and it was great, and it was awesome. You know, that was a heavy 5 years, man. Museum work, restorations, D45s. You do herringbone neck resets. You do 40 of them. You've probably done more than most. Think about it.
Most of the existing herringbones.
Exactly. You know,
Everyone knows what a herringbone is?
D28.
Everybody knows. Yeah.
And so you do that for a long time, and then you work with artists. So after I've done restoration for a long time, I was great. I had all the demand that it's cool, but then I said to myself, man, restoration and museum work is great. Here's my beef with it: is that it's great looking behind the case, man. It's so nice, but it's a guitar. It needs to drive like a Ferrari. It needs to be in the hands of a studio musician. So that's when I said, all right, well now my focus is to work on the best musicians' gear, because I can make them happy. Give me the unhappy ones, I'll make them happy. And I know exactly what it is. So I wound up taking all the Nashville guys, all the Nashville studio guys. I work for everyone, man.
Tell us some of the names. Tell us some. You want the names?
Yeah. A lot of folks, man. They're like really everyone. You know?
Give us a couple names.
Shit, man. I mean,
you don't have to.
I've had, there's a big question of what gauge strings Billy Gibbons plays. Everyone's like, oh, eights. No, it's not. He plays sevens. He plays sevens, man, to like 37 or something like that gauge. And I know that because he gave me a set when I set up his Constitution Les Paul. On a Les Paul Custom with the Constitution, dude had me set it up with a set of sevens. And then he killed it. And he's amazing, you know. But like, you know, guys like that, you know, dudes, you know. And I remember, you know, I hate name dropping like that, but you know, the funniest joke that I heard in the music stores from Eric Clapton, every time he grabbed the guitar and he played like 4 notes on it, he would put the guitar back and shake his hand and say, "Oh, we gotta save some for tonight." like the dude, like he was gonna run out of riffs, you know. But he was such a sweetheart, man, and he was such a good guy. And to have the experience of having Eric Clapton next to you and close your eyes and look away and have him play just 4 notes and you know it's Clapton. God, man, it's amazing.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted you to drop some names because your rise was meteoric, just incredible.
Yeah.
And that you were doing that kind of work. You were, and still are, at the pinnacle of your craft. We're about to go to the Mortality version of this.
Yeah.
But before we do that, drop some guitar names. So you've had your hands in pre-war D45s.
Oh,
$500,000 these days.
$500,000. I actually traveled with Thomas Tull, who owns the Pittsburgh Steelers, to overlook his like $3.5 million just first collection from 1959. And I you know, you get to meet a lot of folks and see a lot of things and have a lot of great opportunities. But again, all of that is great, and it can end any day if you're not delivering with your hands. All of this is talk. All of this is, you know, this is what I've done. That's great, but this is what proved it, right? Yeah. And that was always. I always say this to repair guys, especially at a higher level. I always say you're only good as your last repair. So if you're getting your praises sung and everything is great, pay attention, because you're only as good as your last one. You hand that off to Guthrie Trapp or Bukovac or any of these guys, and then you're gone. That's how that works, because you have to do that. But guys like Bukovac, you know, Tom Bukovac is a pretty famous guy in Nashville, big YouTube channel, homeschooling, whatever. I've been doing exclusively Tom's work for 15 years. He's my best friend. He's a tremendous player, and he's a great guy. And you know, it's those types that I want the best. I want the best. I've always looked at my trade as more of a mechanic and an historian in that way. Musicians are the artists. I'm not an artist. I'm a restoration guy. I don't take creativity.
I'm rolling my eyes on that.
I know.
I'm an artist. Okay?
Well,
if you could see me roll my eyes.
Yeah, but
I know your work.
For me, I have so much respect for musicians. The one thing I really go is the biggest compliment I can hear from a player is when they say, "Man, this thing's played so amazing. It's making me play things I never even thought I was going to play." In the hands of a professional musician, you're giving these guys gold and creativity and stuff, and that's what I really like. And plus, I've always appreciated vintage guitars tremendously, and I've always, people have asked me, "Greg, why don't you build guitars? Every guitar you build with something." Like, yeah, bro, it's because I'm not an artist. I don't have an artistic eye to put together something that looks, in my opinion, like something that is established, something that is there. So I just rather restore the ones where there's a finite amount of them, and that's the way I get it.
Well, let's give a little bit of advice to the community before we go on into our
Yes.
part. And it's this: what guitars would you recommend that the people exhibiting guitars out there? What vintage guitars would you recommend these people play? Now, I'm going to get a little bit of
Which
background.
vintage guitars or
Any guitars. I get a little background. I gave a talk at the Berlin Guitar Festival a few years ago, pre-pandemic, so 3 or 4 years ago, and I got to give a talk to the luthiers the day before the show opened. There were about 100 luthiers there, and I asked them, how many of you have played a Golden Era Martin? And not one of them had, because there's no access. It's hard to get access.
That's right.
And so I started thinking, if you don't have those benchmarks, how do you,
I got you.
right? How do you design a guitar? So you pick, just name a few models of guitars that anybody who's building a guitar, if they're lucky, they should try to find access to.
1937 D28. It amazes me how many people build Martin copies but never have actually studied the original examples. It's amazing to me, and the ones that have usually get it right. And it's not because there's little things that you should pay attention to, you know.
And the wild thing is, 1937 is the magic year in art history.
37 D28 is the holy grail. You know, I would want people to check out a properly made 45 from that period as well, just because the work is beautiful. You know, I also think that there's beauty in other instruments as well, especially for archtop guys. The Angelico. I've had the Angelicos apart. I probably made more D'Angelico pickguards than anybody. You know, I had Voros pickguards for years. There was like 3 years where I don't think I did anything except make bound pickguards. It's crazy. And then I got tired of that. You know, I was like, I looked at All Parts. The company All Parts made an L5 guard, which looked okay. Don't get me wrong. It was like $100. Cost on it was like $60. I'm getting $500 for my beautiful finished bound mitered this and that. A DA guard I was getting like $1,200 for. But when All Parts came out with it for like a $60 guard, and I looked at it, I'm like, you know what, bro? $100 ain't bad. I was like, yeah, that's it. I'm moving on. I'm doing something else. I did this pick guard thing. Yeah, I'm moving on.
Folks know that particularly some of the Angelicals have celluloid that dissolves, deteriorates over time, so that's part of your job.
Yeah,
right?
but I love that, making pick guards and stuff. But yeah. So some of the Martins are important. Some of the archtops are important. For electric guitars, I mean, they're pretty straightforward. Except when you get to something like a laminated top press 335, that's a little bit more complex of an instrument to build, especially if you're not a manufacturing company. That's something worth studying. Electric guitars, I mean, you know, they're cool. They're great. I love them. All right, so let's move on. You know? Like, I love vintage guitars. I love electrics and so on and so forth. But when we're talking about luthiers, when we're talking about fine handmade instruments, I don't want to hear instruments where the golden ones were made out of factories. Right?
I think the greatest electric guitar of all time is a Telecaster. It's 2 pieces of wood screwed together, and there's nothing else to it. And I don't know if you can make a better one, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article on this. I don't even think that technically the Stratocaster is a guitar invention. It's actually an invention. It was the synchronized tremolo as a unit, a fulcrum point unit. That's the invention. The guitar is built around the synchronized tremolo. I don't even think that Leo Fender was looking to invent a guitar at that point.
And he was just rounding off the edges and sticking a tremolo on it.
Yeah, but think about how complex it is. If you take a Stratocaster and you take the synchronized tremolo away from it, it ceases to be an instrument. You can't say that about any other guitar. You can't put another one on there just to get it going. No, it has such a pulley system to it that without that, it ceases to be one. It's kind of interesting.
It's really interesting.
I give so much respect for that invention, synchronized tremolo. And then later on, I wrote an article about Floyd Rose taking that design and adding a master's engineering degree to it, and what he was able to do with it. But yeah, so that's that.
And we should, afterward, do an experiment. You brought that box of Floyd Roses. We're going to randomly attach them to some of the guitars.
Randomly, yeah, just randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we can fast forward a little bit and get to some other things because. You know, we're at a point.
Let's talk now about the start of the laws, right? Because it's a bigger game changer for you. I think I can still. Well, I'm older. I'm 68, so you know I got some years left. You know, I'm not going to lose as much. But life changed everything, and I think probably, as I could say, my sense of I changed, my sense of myself changed. We talked about it this morning, and I thought to think of sort of my brain as the old Tetris game. You know, little obstacles are coming down, and they just suddenly realign. Once I find my cancer, boom, they just move around. The DNA reattaches in a different way. I'm a different person.
Different.
And you, I think, could
Well,
relate to that too.
Yeah, what it is you mourn the loss of yourself, man. Listen, the type of MS that I have, So the type of MS that I have, I was diagnosed in under 3 hours because I had an MRI. Most people that have MS, I did like Zoom chats with MS folks, you know, solidarity type videos and stuff. I had my own peers. They didn't even believe me that I was diagnosed in 3 hours. And they were like, oh, they hunted for a year, they hunted for 2 years. And I'm like, yeah, listen, Al, like, I don't want to be weird about this, but how many brain and spine lesions do you have? I have 7. All right, well, mine were probably a little bit easier to see because I set the Vanderbilt record of 58. So just saying, like, maybe mine was a little bit easier to spot. But, so they found out super early, they found out fast that I've had it for 20 years. And it took the passing of my father to make me go half crippled before I went in there, and they diagnosed me. Okay, so then 4 months of bedridden, 4 months of mourning your career, your status as a husband, your future of a father and what you look like to your daughter and your kids, right? I mean, all of this, and at 39 years old, at the top of my game, I'm still at the moment that I was diagnosed, I was still in magazines. You know, it happens, you know, you get a magazine gig or whatever it might be. Whatever, but I was just happened to be banging, and I just happened to be there, just to put it in my face while I was in bed, you know?
And let's tell people just a little bit about muscular sclerosis, which is a nervous disorder, lesions on nerve tissue.
All right, so multiple sclerosis is the myelin around is the housing around your nerves. When that breaks down and deteriorates is when you start losing function, right? It's your own immune system that's beating it up and also causing these lesions. The flare-ups that you have with MS, right? They usually have to do with something that's shocking to the body, you know, passing of a loved one, and so on and so forth, and that could bring it out. But what happens is that when your brain and your spine has these lesions, right? When your body tries to heal it up, that lesion becomes a scar. The scar is the sclerosis part of the MS. Multiple is just bunches of them, right? Multiple scarring of the brain lesions is really what it is. So for me, the reason I'm able to be mobile and walk around the way I am and speak, and for the most part be in pretty good shape, has to do with most of my lesions didn't scar over. And we can chat about why that didn't happen, and I'm not sure totally about that, but that's where I am. So right now I'm on some heavy duty medication at Vanderbilt, and so as I'm doing my thing, I got out of the flare. I went back to Gruhn's. I told them I no longer want to work 6 days a week. I no longer want to work 5 days a week. I want to go down to a 3-day schedule, and you know, I want to continue to do my management work. So they were super cool. I love Gruhn guitars. Eric is a great friend of mine. George has been such a great person to me. So yeah, I actually got a promotion out of it a few months later. I became the oversight manager of the building company president. Yeah.
Right, and you're not the oversight manager just of that vintage shop. There's a whole new endeavor.
Yeah, I oversee the guitar factory in Lebanon, Tennessee, where we build our own instruments, our own Gruhn model instruments. They haven't been released. We'll release them in June. We'll talk about it some more. But I oversee that, and it's great. George Gruhn owns the design patents for what was the Tacoma Papoose Thunder Chief. And when Fender purchased Tacoma some years back, it was one of the companies they let go. George owned the designs, and he always wanted to put a guitar factory together to make his own designs, and I'm going to help him do it, and we're going to do it. And George has a lot of ideas, and I try to organize him a little bit so we can make some sense of it.
And so this guy, the street fighter, got off the streets and fighting, worked his way up to the pinnacle of career in probably a little record time. Really,
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out, right. And Talk to us about what you've done since you came down with MS. Even more impressive what this man has accomplished since that time. No, it's crazy. It's unbelievable.
So that's really why I'm here. Like a lot of the time that I spend now is doing like radio interviews and just interviews with my YouTube buddies that have channels and stuff like that. And so here's the deal. When I came back to work, the Acoustic Coffee Company has been kind of courting me for like 6 months. They wanted to work with me, and I've lent my name to strings and endorsement. I have DR Strings. I lent my name to Tyler Unger and I own Professor Green's instrument products. So I'm no stranger to having my name on things or whatever it might be, but it was always guitar related. So when these guys are coming to me, I was like, dude, your coffee is great, but it's acoustic coffee. I get it, man. I was like, yeah, I'm a legitimate dude, man. Like, I don't know what to do with your coffee, you know? And then, so then they said, Greg, listen, we went out to lunch, and I told them, I was like, this is where I'm at. You don't want to give me an endorsement. You don't want to give me any of this, bro. I retired. I don't even have a hand. Who the hell am I to be telling people what's up? And he said, well, we'd love to work with you in Gruhn's, and just keep in mind, we work with nonprofits. That was it. We work with nonprofits. I don't know anything about nonprofit. And I said, okay, this was 6 months ago, 7 months ago.
I've got a relationship with them now too, Acoustic Coffee.
Yeah. And I said, okay. So that night I went home and I thought about it. The following day I called up Rich and I told him, listen, bro, if we're gonna do this, here's the way I want to do it. Let's do a blend. Let's make it my blend. I want it to be proprietary. I want it to be good. I don't even want to talk about coffee right now because I know it's going to be incredible. We'll name it after whatever. We'll give it the name, and that's what we came up with, the Greg Voros Legends one. And that's great. And they said we could work something out where $1 per bag goes to your nonprofit. Right? We worked it out. Everything's cool. So now I have a blend. Well, I don't even have a blend. I have an agreement. I have my own coffee with my name on it. I said, fantastic, buck goes. I have a name. I know it will sell. Fantastic, let's do it. So then, because I still was kept on a salary by some of my clients outside of Gruhn's, Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, is one of the guys I work for, and Thomas Tull, I work with him. He's my minority shareholder of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do a lot of his work as well. But this time around, it was Jim Irsay that said to me, through the grapevine, he knew what I was doing with the coffee, and he said he wants to get on board. So one of his number one foreman told me, he said, man, Jim Irsay wants to give you $50,000 to start your initiative. I said, that's fantastic. So I went up to Mr. Irsay and I said, Jim, I really appreciate what you're doing here. And Jim is really, I'm not sure if people know who Jim Irsay is, but he's a really outspoken dude. He's got, talks really, right? He's such a sweet guy. He said, Greg, $50,000 is not, I'm going to give you $250,000. And he did. So what I did with that $250,000 is I sent some of it to the Acoustic Coffee Company to buy seed money, to buy seed bags. So I purchased 4,000 bags of my own blend to give out to people, right? And then I took $200,000 and Vanderbilt gave me my own nonprofit. And so instead of partnering with the MS Society or something existing, Vanderbilt gave me the Voros Innovation and Impact Fund. And it's a fund where all of my efforts go into, and quarterly we have meetings at Vanderbilt on how to disperse the money. And so that's really what I want to talk to people about, and that's really my focus moving forward. This will always be a passion of mine. I will always work at Gruhn Guitars. I will always help in whatever that needs to be done on whatever level. But this is so important to me, and because I see what's happening with it. So in 7 months, from an idea to all of this stuff, we have coffee, things are going great. The first meeting that we had with the Vanderbilt folks was incredible. I allocated all of it, 220 grand I had in my account. I just spent all of it 3 weeks ago. And I tell folks what I'm doing with the money so that it's in full transparency and they see exactly what's happening. So almost $180,000 was allocated to start the Vanderbilt Biolab MS database. And that's taking 26 years of MS MRIs that Vanderbilt has possession of. I took $175,000 and hired 2 full-time database guys to make it in a database from it. And from the conservative numbers that myself and super smart neurologists and folks are telling me, is that in the next 2 years, this will yield us 20 new facts never known with regards to MS. It's $175,000 for that. Nothing. And considering I know people buy guitars for 5 times that without thinking. But so $175,000 went for that. $30,000 went for educating rural Tennesseans about this ailment of MS, and we'll get folks from the Social Security office and lawyers to come down on how to apply for disability benefits, and so on and so forth. So this is honestly becoming my life's work. Not so much the coffee. I love the coffee. Acoustic Coffee Company. These guys are incredible. I love them. Online, acoustic.coffee. I love them. They're fantastic. They know where I'm at. They know what my focus is. My focus is to take care of the folks that have MS that can't take care of themselves. So all the months are going by. I get my infusions once a month, and my nonprofit is actually buying tremendous worthy things for the hospital. From the first vertical wheelchair that was purchased at Vanderbilt was purchased from my nonprofit.
That's amazing.
You know, I'm talking boosters. I'm talking additional lab work that we think that certain people with certain MRIs or certain blood work that need extra work, we step in. My nonprofit steps in. My neurologist, she knows, make it happen. You know. What am I going to tell you? How can I tell you how to best spend it? You've been in this game for 30 years as a professional, you know? So she's a great partner, and I love working with her, but we are making moves. So that's what I tell folks, like, I have many people behind the scenes, well, not many people, some folks behind the scenes that have unbelievable sums of money. And those guys are so incredible, and they take care of some of those moving parts, especially to start this up in the long-term part. But, you know, the coffee sales are important. You know, and those dollars add up. So when I do these events, I tell folks exactly what I'm doing with the money at that time to try to get folks to get in on it. And plus, it's good coffee too.
Yeah,
it's good coffee, and then I went into that whole thing where I wasn't going to put my name on something that wasn't right. So check it out. There's a QR code on the poster outside with my face on it, right by American Artisan Guitars. QR code, and if you guys like coffee, whatever it might be, order a bag. It really goes to a good cause. I get the metrics behind the scenes from both Vanderbilt and the coffee company, so I see every single dollar that comes in. And I told you this, and I'm really hard on this, and I know this is on video, but I make mention of this every single time, because it's very important. I will never make a penny on any of this. Neither will Gruhn Guitars. It's nothing like that. We will never make a penny on any of this. And Gruhn Guitars is kind enough to actually employ me so that I can do this, because they know that it's important to me. And I've already, I've done a lot for George, and they've done a lot for me, so we're kind of family in that way. But this is very important work, and I look to move forward with it, and I want to establish, hopefully, a name for myself in this world as well before it's all.
I got a couple of things to interject. First, buy his coffee, but buy 2 bags of coffee. If you also put JT versus cancer in your code, $1 goes to the prostate cancer foundation for me.
There you go.
And we've talked about this, that at this stage in life, I say that we're close to that precipice of mortality. Right?
That's right.
Close. And I think a lot about legacy these days. So I have a prostate cancer recovery diary on YouTube. I documented my journey. The night before, I got my prostate removed. The night before, I played a song on a guitar. Took the guitar to the hospital. As soon as I came out of anesthesia, a little floppy there. I played the same songs, and people could vote on whether I sounded better with or without cancer. It turns out it was a fraud. My surgeon missed some of my cancer, so it wasn't, but that's a whole other story. But I have 2 people, credit me with saving their lives, who followed me in the guitar world and went over and started following my cancer diary and got a PSA test and discovered they had early prostate cancer. And one of these gentlemen is going to fly. And there are other groups there are a total of 8 guys who credit me with something. One of the fellows is not quite as rich as your rich friends. Would you give them my name, by the way? You tell them I like football. I don't really. It's a lie. You lie for me, right? Yeah. But we're going to fly us to Chicago for a gathering about that. But I think it's a different place in the world to know that you have an interesting future, to put it nicely.
Oh, dude, everything's
just wild, right?
Everything changes, man.
Yeah. So I am laser focused on this mission.
And here's the thing too, like the legacy part, leaving things behind, whatever. Right. We talked about this morning as well. You know, it's I think what everyone wants at the end of the day is for your loved ones to be proud, right? It's one of those things where you actually mattered.
Right.
Did you do something, and what did you do, and were you able to help people? It's a phenomenal guitar collection that you have there. Were you able to help people in the process? And sometimes you can't, because sometimes you're supporting people, so you are, you know, whatever it might be. But I always say, like, man, it takes little things, you know. And one of the biggest, and I told you this before too, the biggest nightmare to me is when it was I was flaring right in the middle of it. Nightmare scenario. And I remember I had a nice house, my wife, my daughter, we got it going on, everything was cool. I never had to worry about my mortgage, or at least no more than like maybe 6-7 months I would have worried a little bit. But in the beginning, I never worried about money like that. And so then I said to myself, man, I think that if I worried about my mortgage payment next month, I would never get out of my flare. Right. Because it's all having to do with inflammation and stress and all of those things. And then I kind of realized why some folks aren't able to get out of it. And I get it. And there's and then we can go into human dignity and so on and so forth, and that's that, and that's where I kind of, it's out of fear.
Well, it's out of fear. So
I'm doing things out of fear.
Well, I don't believe you. I don't believe you have any fear. I'm not falling for it. But I think about leaving a positive footprint. That's my bet when I leave, right? And I do think about this privilege of being financially secure, right? And being able to dedicate a good portion of my energy to something good. Yeah. Right? But not everybody gets to do that, as you pointed out.
But again, I always go to say this. Like, let's get real here, man. Like, I work for folks that are literally billionaires or 100 over millionaires and so on and so forth. And these beautiful people, you know what I mean? My motto is I think I'm like one of the first middle class philanthropists, where I'm looking to put the next 15, 20 years of my life into actually not my 401k. I'm fine. It's one of those things, like, I have enough, I'm good. That's no longer my focus. I'm fine. I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm fine. But the scariest part to me, and what I don't think anybody should go through, is just that. To not have nursing care. You're alone. I'm fortunate I have my wife. I have family in that way that can help and take care of me. If I didn't, I could have means to take care of that. But the idea that I would have to wait for a nurse for a day or two before I can get changed, right? That disrespect is to be had by no one. This is not. This is
dignity.
It's
human dignity. We don't have to worry about it. We're lucky enough not to have to worry about that.
That's it, brother. So look at the work that we're doing, or look at the work that I'm trying. Or my focus is that. Jesus, it's not even that big of a deal. I'm looking to keep some humanity for folks, and if it could be done through coffee, put my name on it. Yeah, let's do it. It's one of those things for me. So
it also has made me a much more grateful person. I think I always was a decent human being.
Did you ever like really appreciate a breeze?
Not like this.
I know, man.
Ever appreciate standing over there playing a guitar?
I get it.
Just being in that room, right? So it's every moment, right?
I get it.
Yeah, I don't know how many moments I've got left.
That's it, man.
And so our illnesses are very different. I faced it later in life, so I'm lucky in that. I think my end will be easier than yours, right? That's a thing to think about, right? That's a thing to think about.
You gotta have like a dark sense of humor.
You do, right?
Right. Or develop one quickly.
You're in trouble if you don't, right?
Yeah. And I think having people around you. I think what helped me tremendously is the outpouring of support.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I had so many damn friends, and because we're all cool and so on and so forth, but the people call, they're so generous, and I never taken anything from anyone. I still won't. But the idea that they would say, hey, Greg, I'm here to help out with medical bills, or here, let's do this, let's get a benefit going, let's do that. I don't want any of it, but the idea that people are thinking about.
It's
How cool is that?
It's great. It's a great thing.
Something happened right over the last 20 years in Nashville for me, so I'm really fortunate, and I'm trying to really move forward. At some point, I don't think I'll ever get out of guitars in any way, because it's just, I can curate, I can do a number of things, and that's something that's such a big passion of mine. But at the end of the day, this nonprofit work and actually making moves behind the scenes where I can actually watch a person get transported in front of me, and I look at it, it's like, how much work did it take for me to do that?
It took a lot of work.
It took maybe 20 some odd years at the end of it.
I'm
But
going to say it took a lot of work. I mean, it doesn't seem like it at this moment.
yeah,
You had to be where you were to
I
have
get
this
it.
happen.
But I love it, and that feels good to me. It's a bunch of feel goods, and I enjoy traveling and meeting folks. And plus, every time I travel and I look at instruments, I'm so impressed. Everything has improved so much in the world of builders and even instrument repairs. So we had this chat, 20 years ago, guitar shows were much different, and it was really kind of a mixed bag of arts and crafters and legitimate luthiers. So you had John Monteleone and some dude, on a second guitar, trying to figure out how to mix up some glue. Things are different now, Things are different now, and I looked around. I think I saw everyone's builds. I really went around, and I was so impressed. There was a lot of solid builds, and people are passionate. You can tell on people's faces how much work they put into it. This is really maddening work. It's not for everyone. Building guitars and instrument repairs, it's not for everyone. Not everyone's cut out for it, and it ages you. I turned 77. I'm just kidding, but I had enough.
Watch it, young man.
Watch it, young man. Yeah, I think by the time I turned 40, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, this show's been fantastic, and honestly, I just want to really thank people for coming and listening to the story, our story.
You don't have questions, comments, criticisms?
You mentioned that you were lucky in that your lesions didn't scar over. Does that mean they healed without scarring, or are they still?
No, they're always lesions. Inflammation is a big deal for folks with MS. So you have to maintain a calm, cool, collected spirit, not to get worked up. Stress is a killer. Certain foods should be avoided. But no, there's no healing. There's no healing. The hope is that the medication that I'm infused with every month will prevent my immune system from continuing to create these lesions. I've been on this medication for 2 years. I own a cane. It's really sporadic for me. So I actually worried a little bit because I didn't bring a cane with me to this trip, But I figured out with Tyler, he takes nature walks all the time. I'm sure he's got some Gandalf stick for me if it didn't work out. But I've actually never flown with a cane before either, so I was nervous that they were going to give me a hard time. It's hit or miss. I can have some days where I look like I feel pretty great. So when I walk around right now, I feel dynamite. And it's funny, when John was asking me what kind of accommodations would you need, and I'm like, dude, that shows 3 months from right now. I feel great. Next week's another thing, man. I don't know, but right now I don't need a wheelchair. I don't need maybe a walker, not a walker, a cane once in a while, but I'll take care of that myself. And for me, I'm doing pretty solid.
You are. People should know that MS is a roller coaster journey. I have 2 other friends with MS. Although there's MS and there's MS, yours is much more aggressive than my other 2 friends.
It tends to be harder on males than females. Fewer males get it than females, but when males get it, it tends to be a little bit more harsh. But I will say this, and even though I have what I have and so on and so forth, I still got it great. I mean, I'm mobile, I'm walking around, jumping around, everything's great. I have the wonderful folks at Vanderbilt. I'm okay. I don't know who's got it worse. It's never a contest. It's never one of those things that I wouldn't want to be.
Right. No,
It's not like that. But it does suck. But you get over it. You eat it. It's one of those things. One of my friends told me, he's like, you got to eat the crow. Beak and feather, everything. Just eat it. But once you eat it, you've processed it. And now, what do we do? Well, I still have a family. I still have a daughter. I still have a career. I still have a name. I still have to make money.
money. They still have to maintain life. I can't. There's you gotta move, man. You gotta move on. You got work to do. You know?
Yeah.
We gotta keep busy.
Ever forward. Ever forward. Yeah.
Godspeed, brother.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for